Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Give Out Day Communications Training 201. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the website after the webinar is over. This is Nicole Pagan from Horizons Foundation. I am the program officer here and the Give Out Day program manager at the foundation. Located in San Francisco, Horizons is the world's first community foundation of, by, and for LGBTQ people. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, and this is our 5th year hosting Give Out Day. We're excited for the new platform and to see how everything goes this year. A couple of housekeeping items. As I said before, we are recording the video. If you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat box or in the Q&A tab. So if you just roll over the bottom of the screen, you will see a black bar that has the navigation panel for the software. Just go ahead and click chat and you can send messages, or you can write into the Q&A. We will take questions at the end of the presentation, so keep typing them in, and we'll go ahead and just read them out and respond to them at the end of the session. And now at this point, I want to introduce my colleague, Curtis LaHaye. He is Horizons Foundation's Senior Manager of Communications, and he is happy to be walking you through this webinar. So Curtis, please take it away.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Hi, everybody. As Nicole said, my name is Curtis LaHaye. I'm the Senior Manager of Communications at Horizons. Prior to joining Horizons about a year ago, just before Give Out Day last year, I was at an organization called GLSEN, which many folks might know as an LGBT org that creates safe and inclusive schools, working in communications there before joining an agency that does nonprofit communication. So I've been doing communications for a while now, and I love it. I'm really excited to guide folks through this. So last week I gave a Communications 101 webinar which focused on first and foremost having a compelling story, how to craft a compelling story, so what elements of a compelling story and how you can use your profile to tell that story. And then we kind of moved into using peer-to-peer fundraising as kind of the most effective mechanism for telling your story and for success in fundraising generally. And I shared a few templates to kind of complement that section. So as I said last week, that was really what I view as fundamental communications for Give Out Day. And what I'm going to share today in this 201 isn't as much kind of advanced. It is just, I think, less fundamental. It's still certainly helpful. These are things like how to use email, your email list, how to use organic and paid social media, how to use the media. But in my view, they're less important than what's really core, which is having a compelling story and using peer-to-peer. Everything else is kind of secondary to that. So given how fundamental the content in the Comms 101 webinar was, I just wanted to review a couple key components before I move into the 201 content. So this is an example story which could appear on an organization's profile. I won't read through it word for word, but I do want to highlight the elements that make it so compelling and which I recommend that you emulate. So the first is simplicity, keeping in mind that your prospective donors will only spend a few minutes on your profile, so you want to keep your story short, easy to understand, and also easy on the eyes, so you don't want to have a huge wall of text listing all your services and accomplishments. Second is clarity of fundraising purpose, so if possible, to convey what you are raising money for, and so try to include a specific fundraising goal that can motivate your donors. Third is specificity of donor impact. So donors often want to know how exactly their individual donation will make an impact. So if possible, you want to tell them. then a strong, urgent ask. So people obviously won't give to you unless you ask them, and they'll be more likely to give to you if you give a sense of urgency and tell them what's at stake. And what's at stake in Give Out Day is thousands in additional prize money through leaderboards. And last but certainly not least is emotional appeal. So if you have a story that can show your impact, a personal human element added to it is helpful, because donors often give because they feel something. To that end, you want to make your profile match your brand by changing your theme color and adding photos to evoke emotion, especially your cover photo. So again, I won't read all of this out. You can refer to the previous webinar, but I did want to reiterate those elements, again, because I view them as the most fundamental. No matter how much you post on social media, no matter how many emails you send, no matter what sort of press you get, if you don't first have a compelling story by kind of implementing these components, it won't really matter. So this is kind of core. And then the other piece I want to reiterate from last week's webinar is how you can tell your story using peer-to-peer. So you will have the most success if you engage your supporters not just to donate, but instead to fundraise for your organization on your behalf. So ask your most engaged volunteers, your program alumni, your board, your staff members to create Give Out Day fundraisers for your organization. And then ask them to reach out to their networks in various ways multiple times. And at the end of last week's webinar, I introduced a new toolkit called the Fundraiser Toolkit, which is a resource that you can directly give to these individual fundraisers that are fundraising on your behalf, and it guides them entirely through the process. It's available as both a PDF and as a Word document, so you can just download it and use it as is, or you can edit it to customize it for your organization. In any case, it's a really valuable resource to help your individual fundraisers have fundraising success. That's kind of the big points from last week's webinar. I ended with talking about that new resource, and today I want to start by introducing yet another new resource. So whereas the fundraiser toolkit that I shared last week was created for your individual fundraisers, the people who are creating fundraisers on your behalf, this toolkit is made specifically for you. So it's for the organizations who are raising money. So this resource is now available in the Nonprofit Toolkit on the website, so you can look at it after this webinar. I just want to pull it up. Hold on, I'm just pulling this up. Are you able to see that, Nicole?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. So this communications toolkit starts with what I view as the most fundamental content that I just shared, that I just reiterated, the elements of having a compelling story. Then it explains how to use peer-to-peer to tell your story, so content that we've already covered. This provides a template for reaching out to fundraisers, so how to ask your most important supporters to create fundraisers for your organization through various means like email, text message, social media. And then it moves into what we're going to cover today, which is about using kind of your own communications channels to amplify your story beyond peer-to-peer. So securing media coverage provides a media template, which we'll walk through later. And then using social media and email, the best practices for those platforms, and some templates for that. So again, this is on the Nonprofit Toolkit. I encourage you to take a look at that afterwards, and we'll be kind of revisiting it as we walk through this. I'm going to walk through now the different kind of tools available for you for amplifying your story. So, I mentioned how peer-to-peer is really your best chance at fundraising success. I talked last week about how people are just simply more likely to give to a friend who is raising money for an organization than to your organization directly. So when we talked about email and social media and media, we should really be viewed as complementary to a peer-to-peer strategy. Although it's complementary, I view email as kind of the next best thing, as kind of the second most important, because these are people who have opted into your email list. So they've opted into receiving communications from you, so they are good candidates to fundraise for your organization and also just to give. So, the first question will probably be, what are the emails that I should be sending? So the first email that you should send, which I recommend sending, within the next couple weeks, if possible, is asking your supporters to create a fundraiser page. So asking them kind of to take their support to the next level, and then in that email distribute to them a fundraiser toolkit. In the communications toolkit I just shared, there is a template email for making this ask that I recommend that you use. Then you can send an email reminding them to create that fundraiser page, and then the next kind of communication would be on March 26th, which is an important date because that's the date that early giving opens. So any donations made between March 26th and Give Out Day on April 23rd count towards the leaderboard prizes. So they can count towards allowing you to win thousands in additional prize money. Another communication, you'll want a communication as you're nearing Give Out Day, something like 1 week away. You could even do something like, Give Out Day is tomorrow, or other kind of countdown emails. You'll want to communicate certainly in the morning of Give Out Day, as well as throughout the day in a way that makes sense for your organization, which could be when you hit specific milestones, like when you're halfway to your goal, or when you've reached your goal and you want to push people further. And then you'll definitely want to send an email on the day after Give Out Day, communicating your results and celebrating success and thanking all your donors. So when thinking of what is the content in these emails, the answer is first, you want to include what the elements of a compelling story, to include the elements of a compelling story. So those are all the things that we just covered. So you want to be really clear in your emails what your fundraising goal is, what the impact of a specific donation is. You want to include a strong, urgent ask. One way of doing that is by being really explicit about what's at stake, which is the leaderboard prizes. And if your organization has secured any match, that would be important to communicate about. And then where possible, kind of enhancing the emotional appeal, particularly through testimonials and human stories. And you also want to be really clear within these emails what Give Out Day is and what that donation period is. So that's simply, Give Out Day is the only national day of giving for the LGBT community. And again, donations starting March 26th through to the end of April 23rd are in the donation period, so they will count towards these prizes. So I wanted to share one template email. This is within the communications toolkit, copied directly from it. So you can refer to there. You don't have to write all this down. So just to kind of walk through this. Hi, Ricardo. We are so thrilled to be participating in Give Out Day, the only national day of giving for the LGBT community. So again, starts with an explanation of Give Out Day. LGBTQ organization is raising $5,000 to fund 1,000 calls with local youth seeking support. So going right into what your goal is, so that's the clarity of fundraising purpose. And we really need your help. Please consider making a $25 gift now, which funds 4 calls for youth seeking support. So that's the specificity of donor impact. What is the impact of their specific gift? I recommend including a Give Now button to draw attention to your call to action. People make it as easy as possible for people to give. Give Out Day is April 23rd, but our campaign starts today. Why? Because every donation made on our Give Out Day page from today through midnight, April 23rd, counts towards leaderboard prizes. This means that your donation could help us win thousands in additional prize money. Put simply, your gift goes so much further. This is a huge opportunity for us, and we count on your support. This particular template would be specifically for our communication you send on March 26th, so for when early giving opens. But this template could be adapted really easily for all the other communications that we mentioned. So for, Give Out Day is a week away. You can use this content, this template, as a starting point to adapt that message. So I want to share a few best practices for email, things to keep in mind as you're sending your emails. So something that people are sometimes worried about is sending too many emails. And the reality is that many organizations will probably send far more emails than you. Some organizations send emails literally, every week, twice a week. So I wouldn't worry too much about sending too many emails. In part because repetition is so important. So people will be more likely to give if they have, been asked many times. So to that, in that vein, you might want to think about how you could incorporate Give Out Day into, for example, your email newsletter. In addition to sending these one-off emails, how can you incorporate in other emails you're sending as well? Another key element is segmentation. So, this is the idea that, if a message is written in a way that feels very relevant or specific to an individual recipient, they'll be more likely to respond to it. So that means you might want to try sending different emails based on different criteria. So you might want to target your last year's Give Out Day donors with a message inviting them to participate again. You might want to invite non-donors to make their first gift, or invite lapsed donors to renew. So you want to think about how you could divide your audience in different ways to send the most appropriate messages for them. So you could divide by, send a different email to board members versus volunteers versus program alumni, things like that. Another key element is presentation. So, making sure that emails look good on mobile phones is really important. We see an increasing amount of Give Out Day traffic from mobile phones, and we think that's only going to increase this year, especially because the Give Out Day site is mobile responsive. You'll want your emails to be visual if possible, and include short text and a call to action button. So you don't need a 500-word, 1,000-word email. Often 100, 200 words is the most you really need to communicate your message. Remember that these emails will be looked at very quickly, and you want to capture attention as quickly as possible. Something else you may want to try is A/B testing, so trying out different messages, trying out different send times, trying out different subject lines, trying out different senders. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but if you do have the capacity, you might want to try to do testing like this, see what works the best, and then adjust your future emails based on what you've learned. And last note here about don't sweating about send times. People often ask, like, what is the best time I should send my email? Or, in the same vein, like, what is the best subject line? What is the best, XYZ? And the truth is that it depends on your audience. Your email list is only your email list, is different than everyone else's. So the best way to answer all those questions is just to test. And oftentimes, those little details don't actually make a big difference. Whether you send an email at 8 a.m. versus 9 a.m., you might see absolutely no difference. So worry more about getting the email out than about the exact time it goes out. that said, you might not want to send an email, in the middle of the night or something like that, but some of these more minor differences aren't going to be that consequential. So now I want to transition into talking about how to use social media. So starting with the same question that we asked for email, what content should I post? And you'll see that this is actually the exact same list as the email list, and that's because when you think about what content you're posting on social media, you always think about it in the context of the content you're sharing via email. You want to make sure that you're presenting an integrated campaign that feels cohesive, so that if somebody reads your email and then later scrolls down their news feed and sees a post, they're getting a consistent message and having a cohesive experience. That's going to be what will be most compelling and most persuasive for them to give. I want to share some social media best practices. First, mention about templates. Within the communications toolkit, in the same way that there was an email template, there's a whole list of sample social media posts that you can use, which has language that you can adapt for your organization. So make sure to check that out. In terms of best practices, one question that is common is what platform should I be fundraising on? And the answer in short is it kind of depends on your specific organization. Where is your audience most likely to live? Where do you have the most followers, and so on. Generally, what we see is that Facebook is most successful. We see that the majority of donations that come from social media posts come from Facebook posts. So it's very likely that, especially if you're limited in capacity, to just focus on Facebook posts. But that said, there's certainly no harm in trying other platforms, especially if you've been successful there in the past. But I would definitely recommend starting with Facebook. Another point to consider is about being visual. So consider complementing your posts with videos, shareable graphics, photos that can really help bring your content to life. Give Out Day shareable graphics will be made available in the nonprofit toolkit. Those are coming soon. And all of those shareable graphics you can post alongside the template language that is included in the communications toolkit. But if you want to create your own graphics, you're certainly encouraged to. A tool that I recommend for that is something called Canva, which is a free tool that's really great for simple graphic design. And if you decide to create video content, something to keep in mind is that it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be heavily edited in any form. But video content just tends to perform really well, especially on Facebook. So having videos, even if it's basically a selfie video of someone talking about the campaign, or a testimonial from a participant, or kind of live behind-the-scenes content on the day itself, all of that content is kind of prioritized in the news feed. So definitely something to consider creating. Another question that is often pondered is whether you should try paid advertising. So first, non-digital ads, so like print ads or other types of ads, like out-of-home ads or other types of advertising, are probably not the best use of funds, in part because you have to convince folks to go from offline, like reading a magazine or looking at the newspaper, to online, actually going to the website, and that's a lot to ask from folks. The alternative is to do digital ads, which I recommend instead, particularly Facebook ads. Specific guidance for using Facebook ads. First, something to consider is that if you saw an ad on Facebook or anywhere really that asked you to give to an organization that you've never given to before, will you respond to the ad? Some people are persuadable from ads even if they've never heard heard of an organization for the first time, but it's much harder to make that case to a brand new donor. That said, you could run Facebook ads to people who are already in your network. So Facebook has a tool called Custom Audiences. I'm not going to go through the specifics of how that works, but all that information is available online. But that tool lets you upload your email list and target ads to them. You can target people who have interacted with your Facebook page, target people who have visited your website via something called the Facebook Pixel. All of these are people who have already demonstrated some interest in your organization, who have engaged in some way, and those people, if they aren't yet donors, they're the highest likelihood of becoming donors. So that's what I recommend there. What would be the best content for these ads? I think there's two types of ads that you could create. One, asking folks to become fundraisers for your organization, given that that's the kind of highest priority is recruiting fundraisers who can set up fundraiser pages and fundraise on your behalf. And then secondly, the giving ads. But I wouldn't run those until early giving opens, so that people, if they click and they give, their donation actually counts towards the leaderboard prizes. And you'll want to kind of emphasize that in your ads, that every donation brings you closer to winning thousands in prize money. So a question often is, how much should I spend? And a good guide is that, if you spend $100, that could lead to 50 to 100 clicks onto a given website. You might expect that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those folks might actually move forward with donating, and depending on the value of their donation, the ad could pay for itself. But I also often think about advertising in terms of, creating another touch point for folks. So say you post something on Facebook that you don't put money behind, asking people to give. Then you send an email asking people to give, and then later they see an ad on Facebook asking them to give again. Again, it's just more repetition, makes it more likely that people will actually respond to your asks. So the short answer is you could try it. You could try paid advertising. Definitely start with a small amount, small investment, and then see if that leads to any success for you, and just generally go about it in a strategic way. And some of these other tactics that we've talked about could be more of a sure bet. So last element I want to talk about is using the media. So this is the same organization that I've been using as the example in my webinar last week, and this one is Amor para Todos, who won a leaderboard prize last year. And one reason, I'm sure, is that they were able to secure media coverage by doing outreach to journalists. So this is 2 of the media heads that they were able to secure, one from a local publication in Petaluma, California, which is where the organization is based, and the Bay Area Reporter, which is an LGBTQ-focused publication in the Bay Area. So again, a fairly local publication. So how do you go about securing this type of media coverage? The first step, or the first most important element is, as I've been saying over and over, is just having a compelling story. If the story that you're sharing, your fundraising purpose, your campaign theme, if it's not compelling for folks, it definitely won't be compelling to the media. Ultimately, you're trying to convince journalists to write something about your organization and your campaign. So if it's not something that's going to grab their interest and not going to grab their readers' interest, they're not going to respond to you. But if you do, frame your campaign in a compelling way, it could be it could be persuasive. You could be able to persuade journalists to write about it. So you want to, once you have a compelling story, you can identify some potential outlets to reach out to. You're going to be most successful if you, or most likely to be successful if you choose small local publications or local LGBTQ publications, because you won't be competing with bigger stories. So you want to identify those publications and then identify the reporters of those publications who would be the most likely to write about your campaign. So something good to look for is what journalists have covered LGBTQ issues before, or something else that's really relevant to your organization. So you can go to a publication's website, search for LGBT, find some articles that are relevant, and then identify those journalists who have written them. So you want to send an email to those journalists that you identify and follow up with them, keeping in mind the question, why should the media care? And as an alternative route, or as something additional you can do, is consider submitting an op-ed. So find the kind of op-ed submission mechanism that's on the publication's website, and consider authoring and submitting something that makes the case for your campaign. And it's often going to be most persuasive to the editors if it's something tied to current events, so it feels relevant of why you're writing this piece now. And then you can consider afterwards, after the campaign is over, to send another pitch talking about your success. So within that communications template, there is a communications toolkit, rather. There is another template, which is what I'm calling a media pitch template. So here's an example email that you can send to journalists to pitch their campaign. You could also consider, sending a press release, but I oftentimes find that it's more successful to do this sort of one-on-one outreach with individual pitches to journalists. So what this pitch says: hi, Mark, I'm the name of the journalist. I want to let you know that LGBTQ organization has launched a campaign for Give Out Day, the only national day of giving for the LGBT community. We are an organization that runs a crisis hotline for LGBTQ youth, and we are trying to raise $5,000 to fund 1,000 calls to local youth seeking support. If we earn the most individual donors in our category, we could win thousands in additional prize money. One angle for our story is the experience of our program recipients, like Eric. When he faced bullying at school, he called our organization and got the support he needed to keep going. This campaign is important to our community because interested supporters can contribute to the campaign between March 26th and April 23rd. Supporters are also encouraged to set up their own fundraiser for LGBTQ organization on the site. Please let me know if you have any questions. So this media pitch serves to kind of introduce the journalists to what your organization is and what your goal is for this campaign, and what's at stake, so why it matters. And that's because you could win thousands of additional prize money. You're also able to offer to the journalists more of a potential story by including a testimonial of some sort. The examples that I shared with Amor para Todos, those stories were often really focused on the human story of Renee's trans son, which kind of motivated the founding of the organization in the first place. So there was a really strong story element to that. So again, this template is inside the communications toolkit. So again, check that out. So that kind of concludes the formal section of this. Again, I'm not going to go through the communications toolkit again, but it covers kind of all of this same content that was covered in the webinar, but includes a bunch of tips and templates that kind of go further. So now I'm open to take questions.
Great, thank you, Curtis. Folks, we've got a couple of questions already in the queue, so I'll go ahead and read those out. And if you have any questions as we're reading through them and answering them, then please go ahead and get those typed in. So the first question is, are the additional prizes listed on the giveoutday.com site anywhere? Yes, actually it's giveoutday.org, just to be clear. But yes, they're not on the site just yet, but we will have them up by the end of this week. So please visit the site again, and they will be there a little bit later in the week. And then, so the second question is, can you share the link to the communications toolkit, please? So that's on the nonprofit toolkit page of the website. Curtis, can you navigate there and show folks where those tools are?
Sure. So once you go to giveoutday.org, you scroll down, there's a resources tab. You click resources nonprofit toolkit. And it's right here. There's a resources and toolkit section. So the Give Out Day Communications Toolkit.pdf, that's the document that I've been talking about. The shareable graphics are coming soon and will be available here, the logos and other communications related resources. And then the other toolkit that I discussed and released last week, the peer-to-peer fundraiser toolkit, is available here, the PDF and the Word document. And then all of the webinars are below this, and today's webinar will be at the bottom of this page.
Okay, the next question is, we are a fiscally sponsored organization. Can we participate? Yes, you definitely can. Just click the register button, fill out that basic form that's there, and the Mighty Cause support team will reach out to you and help you get set up as an organization. Your fiscal sponsor is going to have to help you with one of the steps, which is setting up the electronic funds transfer if they want to do it that way. Otherwise, if they don't set up the EFT, we call it, then they will just get a paper check for your donations instead of having it go through electronically. Okay, so next question. Do all the donations need to be received via Mighty Cause to count towards prizes? No. So but they do need to be entered into the Mighty Cause system. So what that means is, like, if you're having a live event, or somebody accidentally makes a fundraiser through Facebook or something like that for you, there is a way through the system to upload donation data that you have received. You will still need to include the first name, last name, and email address, because the system is looking for those 3 pieces of unique information to identify a unique donor. And if you do put those into the system, they of course are not going to be subject to any of the fees that are associated with processing the donations through the Mighty Cause platform. Okay, I'm gonna give a few more minutes to folks to ask some questions. If you think of anything afterwards, please send an email to us at giveoutday@horizonsfoundation.org. I'm gonna type that into the chat box so you can copy and paste it if you need to. Okay. There you go. What kind of amplification do you all do on behalf of individual organizations? So as the organizer of Give Out Day, we feel our role is primarily to amplify the day itself, and to provide our organization's partners the tools and templates and all of that kind of stuff so that they can do the amplification through their own channels and through the channels of their networks. Curtis, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, not particularly, but just, I guess, more or less reiterating that, when we direct traffic, we're sending traffic to giveoutday.org, which is kind of the main site to search for organizations. So it's not a particular organization per se, but we're encouraging people to find organizations that they want to give to.
Okay, Curtis, here's one for you. So is the basic overall strategy to, one, ask our supporters to make a direct contribution themselves to Give Out Day, and two, ask them to ask their social networks to also give?
Uh, yes, but I would reverse the order. So first, ask your supporters to make fundraisers for your organization. So that's more or less number two. So when they go to your organization's profile page, they can click the fundraise button, set up a fundraiser, and use the fundraiser toolkit to kind of have all the tools they need to fundraise. So that involves asking their networks to make contributions to their page. So it's a fundraiser that they really own, but ultimately the value of it goes back to your organization's page, so it counts towards your totals. So that's one, creating fundraisers, and then two, yes, the posting asking people to give. But kind of a main theme that I've been trying to highlight is that it's much more compelling if somebody is asked by one of their friends to give to an organization than if the organization itself asks people to give. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry about that. So let's see, there's actually two more questions. There's three, actually, two from the same person. So I'll tackle the first one. I'll ask the first one, we can respond to that, and then I'll ask the second one. How should we determine the goal dollar target for Give Out Day? So I would say that's going to be sort of individual to the organizations and what you think is possible in your network. You might set what is, sort of a call the stretch goal, which is something that you think might be more than what you would be able to fundraise. We've seen organizations do that and, totally blow past the target based on the campaign that they run and the networks. The good thing about the site is that if you set a goal and halfway through the day it feels like you're not going to reach it, you can always change the goal so it looks like you're getting closer, so you can lower it so it looks like you're getting closer to meeting the goal you initially set. Or if you do go beyond it, you can then go ahead and raise it so that people still feel the urgency and sense to want to give to your organization and not like you met your goal so they don't need to. Curtis, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. I mean, I just want to emphasize that you can change your goal, like Nicole said. So I personally think it's better to start to be somewhat conservative, and then if you feel like you're gonna hit it, you can always change it. Even if you do hit it, you can change it again, and so people kind of always feel incentivized to give.
Okay, so the second question was, so within our Give Out Day profile on the Mighty Cause platform, can we funnel donations through our website so we can track data, etc.? So there's two things. You can either do what I talked about earlier today, which is do an upload of gifts from your own platform into the Give Out Day platform, as long as that happens before the Give Out Day period is over, that they will count towards the leaderboard totals. The other thing you can do is it's possible to, on your own website, put a button from your Give Out Day profile so that if they click that button on your site, it's actually navigating them to your profile here to make the gift. Okay. Next question. Does Give Out Day ever advertise or spotlight any organizations via social media or other platforms? Generally, we have not. What we have done a couple of times is when we're working with some of um, uh, the media partners that we have who give us in-kind kind of media support. Occasionally, they have asked for an organization that's local to them, so local and relevant to their, so that we have put them in touch with so that they can, get a story from those folks. But that's about the only way that we have individually supported individual organizations. Okay, so then the next question is, since the leaderboard prizes are only for certain organizations, how does promoting it to donors help? So actually the leaderboard prizes are not for specific organizations, not in total. We have had in the past geographically bounded leaderboards or leaderboards for particular identities within our community. But we also have the national leaderboards, and national does not mean that it is an organization that is working nationally. It's just that every organization who's participating in Give Out Day, who has provided us the information that we need to give them to put them on leaderboards, is going to be on one of the 3 national leaderboards, which have the prize values of $10,000 for the first prize, $5,000 for the second prize, and $2,500 for the third prize. And the eligibility requirements for those leaderboards are based on budget size. So small organizations with budgets under 100K are on one leaderboard competing against each other. There's a middle size category that is for organizations with budgets between 100 and $600,000. And then there's a large size organization category for any organization with budgets over over $6,000. We do know that we have the Southern leaderboards this year again, so those ones will be specific to organizations that are located in the Southern states. And we will be announcing some power hours and other prizes within the coming weeks. Let's see. And then there was a follow-up, or as there's only one or several winners per category, how does it help? Curtis, do you want to tackle the how does it help in the communications as a strategy?
Yeah, for sure. So donors are often more likely to give if they feel like there's some incentive. So if they feel like their donation could go further than just their donation alone. So if you're able to convey that, your $25 gift, for example, isn't just a $25 gift, but it actually could help you win one of these prizes by helping you get the most individual donors in your leaderboard. Then they might be more compelled to give. So it can be a really compelling tactic, and oftentimes, and this is also what makes Give Out Day unique, right? It's not every day that you're able to say, you should give because your donation could go further because of a match or something like that. So that's what makes kind of Give Out Day a kind of a special opportunity and kind of uniquely kind of compelling.
Okay, so what is the cutoff day and time to get the name, email, and donation of donors to count? So everything has to be either processed through or into the Mighty Cause system by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on the 23rd of April. So anytime between March 26th and April 23rd, just before midnight, anything that goes into that period of time will count towards the leaderboards. Although that should not be, let me back up a second. If you're putting in offline donations, we would prefer that those be from Give Out Day themselves. Don't just say every donation that you've got in the month of March is specifically because of that, unless it actually was because of your Give Out Day participation. And so the follow-up question is the count also measured by participation, number of donors, and not just the dollar amount? It's not based on the dollar amount at all. It is entirely based on the number of unique donors that you get. Okay, let's see. That was the last of the questions that we have typed in now. If anybody has anything else, please go ahead and get that typed in. The other thing I would say, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing an audit of where folks are at with setting up their fundraising pages on the website. There are 5 basic steps that you need to do. For us, for Horizons purposes, we will consider the profile complete if you do everything up to the electronic funds transfer step. If for some reason you don't want to provide your banking account information, or you would prefer to receive an electronic a paper check, then that's not a bar to your profile being complete or not. But the basic elements are, making sure you have an image in your banner, which can be an image that you upload, or they actually have an image gallery there. Making sure that you have a story in there, like some information about your organization, using the sort of storytelling tactics that Curtis has laid out, and that you have an avatar or profile photo, and also that you have added some content to your thank you checkout screen. The donors will automatically get the tax exempt thank you from the site, but there's also the ability to customize the thank you screen there. So if you do that, it's just another touch point. You can add a video to it, another photo, direct them to go, to your website or something like that. So that's just another way to touch your donors at the end. Okay, let's see. I don't see any more questions that have come in. Curtis, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to make one final plug for the communications toolkit. As Nicole was just explaining, when we do that audit, we'll be looking to see if you've completed your profile, including the story section. And though we're not going to make sure you have, every element of a compelling story that I've laid out, I do encourage you to look through the communications toolkit to read through what those elements are, and to think about how to incorporate them. We often see that a lot of profiles have, big walls of text, or they try to lay out, every service they provide, every accomplishment they've made, their whole history. And the reality is that, that's not what's going to be compelling for folks to give. So to look at that toolkit, to see what those are, and try to emulate that. And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you, Curtis. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. This concludes our schedule of webinars. All of the previous webinars are currently on the website if you want to take a look at them or download the slides. And we will have this one up as soon as it finishes rendering and getting uploaded into YouTube later today. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.